So Sony showed off this thing recently. I guess its rollout plan for the PS5 is to leak a little bit of information here and there, just trickle it out to remain in front of the hype for as long as possible before a bigger, larger, grander reveal. I'm not sure, but that's not really what this video is about. I want to talk today about controllers, about the Xbox Series X controller, about the Dualshock 4, which you're using on your PS4 right now, and then this Dualsense controller. What it is, what it gets right, and I think the one really big thing it's already getting wrong, which in all likelihood won't really matter to a lot of people, but for people like me is actually really important. I want to start by saying something that I think most people know, with maybe the exception of the offset thumbsticks. The Xbox One controller is considered a phenomenal controller. Some people like the offset thumbsticks, some people like them to be symmetrical, but that's not the point. That controller is lauded as one of the best video game controllers of all time. It feels good, it's got a nice weight to it, the triggers are nice. You can't really compare it to the Dualshock 4 in terms of which one is better. That's not my point here. That comes down to preference. But my point is that the Xbox One controller is a nice refinement of the Xbox 360 controller. It may in some ways not even be as good as the Xbox 360 controller, which might have been a perfect controller. But what the Xbox One controller is something that didn't need a lot of evolution. It didn't need a revolution, I should say. And so the Xbox Series X controller, while giving you new ways to feel rumble, adapting the triggers a little bit, and playing with the D-pad, is essentially just an Xbox One controller. It's still got its battery pack, which we're gonna get to. It's still got the same shape, it's still got the same color. It is basically the Xbox One controller, and that's fine. But it's really unique when in comparison to what Sony's done with the PS5 controller, which is essentially marry the Xbox One controller with the Dualshock 4. There's a lot of weird stuff going on here. The first thing is, this controller has a built-in microphone, which nobody asked for. Now, it's not a bad thing that the microphone's there. There's a mute button now underneath that little PlayStation button where you can mute that mic. But I can't fathom the quality of that mic being great, especially the distance where most people hold the controller. Can't wait to hear little Tommy screaming explicitives at me while holding it an inch from his face. But not only that, it just seems like a weird thing to put on your controller in the sense that it'll change the way you hold it in some ways, and in other ways, people who aren't cognizant or don't care will be screaming into their controller unknowingly in chats in Modern Warfare and all sorts of other things. Again, not a detriment at all. It's nothing but a supplementary feature, just a little bit strange. But from there, this thing kind of does what you'd hope it does. It looks a little bit bigger, which is good. The Dualshock 4 is a little bit small for people with larger hands. You're getting haptic feedback now in the triggers, which is awesome, by the way. Not only does it change the way you use them, but it changes the way they feel, which is really nice in terms of vibrating sensation, grip, all sorts of things. This mostly comes into play when developers really attempt to take advantage of it. You'll see it a lot in racing games, which Sony already mentioned. And when you combine that with adaptive triggers, which means that the actual time to press it down or how much pressure is needed to press it down can change based on what's going on. Sony mentioned drawing a bow to shoot an arrow. That's a really, really great addition and a great evolution of what the Dualshock 4 is, which at times, by the way, can feel like a toy. The controller also gets rid of the light bar, which is probably a good thing since it was a basically functionless tool on the controller. A couple of games tried to cleverly take advantage of it, but they were mostly exclusive Sony games, and more importantly, none of them had really anything exceptional for that feature to do. It looks just from the visuals like the squishier shoulder buttons may have been changed a little bit as well. Triggers are still symmetrical, and it looks like the thumbsticks are still textured, or maybe even more textured, and you get your spaceshipy white and black design. Now, a couple of really great things here. One, it maintains the headphone jack on the bottom of the controller, which is really, really awesome. Number two, I think the form factor of the controller is a tried and true form factor, but I'm worried about two things. One thing is already there, and I'm not super stoked about it, and the other thing is something that needs to be improved upon that we just won't know yet. One, the battery life of the Dualshock 4 is awful. It is terrible. Depending on how long you've owned your controller for, you can get that thing down to the point in just a little bit of time to where you're getting 4 or 5 hours of charge if you're lucky. Sometimes, depending on how much you've used that battery, it can be less. So while it's nice that they're going with the rechargeable battery again, it would be great if there was more life in that battery, and I'm sure there will be. One thing that's definitely going to help with that is removing the light bar, but that brings me to the thing I think I immediately have a problem with, and it's not going to bother most people, and I probably shouldn't, but it's that the touchpad still exists. There are a lot of games that have done interesting things with the touchpad. Horizon Zero Dawn is one of them when it comes to opening the map and inventory and all that stuff. Some games have you scratching things off with a touchpad. It's all gimmicky crap. That's really not necessary. It's nice as a button, an extra button, especially when you can map a couple of different commands there, left side, right side, and middle, and then touch. That's really great, but it takes up even more space on this new controller, and it already took up probably too much real estate on the Dualshock 4. But that's not really what concerns me about it. I don't need the touchpad, but but if you like it, that's awesome. There's nothing wrong with the touchpad necessarily, but if you'll notice on both sides of the touchpad are new light bars. So I've been talking about getting rid of that original light bar on the DualShock 4, which is great because it drained people's battery. There's practically no way to get it all the way turned off, even though you could dim it. And again, functionless. Now you have these two strips. Are they going to eat up as much battery as the original light bar did? I don't know. What purpose do they serve? Are they just there for aesthetics? If so, cool. Can we turn them off? Again, to some people, this is not going to be a big deal at all. But for other people that maybe don't have as long of a charging cable for their PS4 or are playing with the one that it came with, or just play longer sessions when it comes to how they play games. They play for 6, 8 hours, 9 hours, and don't want to have to charge their controller. These things suck up battery like you would not believe. And unfortunately, things like adaptive triggers and new haptic feedback are also going to suck up more battery as well. Sony needs to make sure that that battery is not only more than capable than what the DualShock 4's battery is capable of doing, but it needs to make sure that it is more than that. It is better than that. So the new things that are going to eat at that battery are mitigating factors in creating a new standard for battery life, meaning that there is more time to play before having to charge. And that brings me to, I guess, the big debate going on the internet right now, which is the Xbox Series X controller is still going to take batteries. It's still going to come out of the box with a battery pack. I have a couple of things to say about this. First off, rechargeable batteries do exist. We all know that. Secondly, batteries in general last a lot longer, obviously, than a rechargeable battery in terms of individual play use. Meaning, a DualShock 4, you're gonna get 4, 5, 6 hours from it, and then you have to charge it. A regular battery, you can hopefully get a lot more than that before having to do anything with it. But I'm going to place my foot in one side of this camp. I do not like battery packs. And no, it's not because I'm too lazy to get rechargeable batteries. And no, it's also not because rechargeable batteries are too expensive. It's simply because you have to look at the bigger picture with who's using these controllers, how they're using them, and go from there. Right now with a DualShock 4, let's say you want to go to your friend's house, you want to bring your controller. Great, you pack up your controller and you bring it. You're looking at plugging it in with a cable that you have that probably charges your cell phone or another device. Everybody has a USB-C cord somewhere for some reason. So when your controller dies when it's at your friend's house, you can easily plug it in and charge it. Or you're a little kid going away to camp or your grandparents' house. Same situation. With a battery pack, not everybody is sitting there with this nice gaming space with a bunch of batteries sitting next to them or a chargeable battery station. But more importantly, not everybody has the foresight to get rechargeable batteries or carry around extra batteries. There's a large install base, I'm sure, with these consoles that don't even know rechargeable batteries exist. And there's a whole group of parents out there that aren't buying their kids rechargeable batteries. To me, it strikes me as a way to very easily sell an extra peripheral for $20, $15, $25, $30, whatever it ends up being. It seems like an easy way to sell a battery pack. If Microsoft really wanted to push the whole batteries are better idea, batteries are better, batteries last longer, okay, cool. When you open up your Xbox Series X box, there should be a controller with a battery pack in it. And then there should be another little back that you put on if you want to switch over to batteries. That is a solution to the problem that makes everybody happy. Cost of production is not going to rise because you put an extra little plastic backing in there to allow it to swap to battery use. Build a controller so you have the option out of the box of charging it with a chargeable battery pack or using batteries. There's really no excuse for not doing something like that other than we want to sell you an extra peripheral. Microsoft really does not care if you're in the whole batteries are better camp. They're not trying to push a new way of life onto you. They're not trying to sell you on their new techniques. They don't care. If you don't want to use batteries, it's no skin off their back. They just want to sell something extra, and it's not a huge deal, but it is a bit of an annoyance, and it strikes me as just as ridiculous as everything Apple does with their computers and their devices every single time they release a new version of those things. This proprietary hardware nonsense is annoying. It is not consumer friendly to give consumers options but upcharge them for them. It is consumer friendly to give consumers options and make those options easily accessible with little work or investment. But before I wrap this video up, I do want to talk about one more quick little news story or kind of address the reality of the things that are coalescing throughout 2020. A lot of you have been messaging me, Twitter DMing me, asking me in the comments what I think is going to happen to these systems and these games meant to come out later in 2020. And I think it's really clear what's probably going to happen here, and it's a lot less scary in some ways than I think people think, and scary is probably a bad word. There's really bad stuff going on outside of the walls of the gaming community. None of this is particularly terrifying. That's never put into better perspective than something like this. But I think it is kind of clear that these systems are going to launch this year. I think that these companies have every intention of making that happen. And I think with supply chains slowly starting to open back up in whatever fashion they do, it will allow that to happen. What I do think people should be expecting, and what I think is fairly obvious, a genuine reality of what Nintendo goes through artificially on a consistent basis. Scarcity. So a lot of people talk about Nintendo's artificial scarcity all the time. It's very clear. With amiibos, with things like the NES and SNES Classic, the way they handled those things, and even dating back to the Wii, they use a tactic known as artificial scarcity. What that means is you create this demand and this hype over something that is seemingly exclusive and limited, and you build your marketing through word of mouth through that exclusiveness. So for example, in 2008 when the Wii launched, yes, the craze was bigger than Nintendo thought, but they very intentionally limited the amount of Wiis that they could produce to build that hype up, to get the media covering it, to make it the hottest toy of the holiday season, and it worked. And they tried the same thing with the NES, they did the same thing with the amiibo. It's worked in the past and it'll work again in the future. But what we're gonna see here is genuine scarcity. For one of the first real times with the big console players, they are not going to be able to keep up with the demand for these systems. There's almost no way. It's going to probably be tough if you don't pre-order the system to get one of these for a while, whether it's the Xbox Series X or the PS5. It's unlikely that supply chains will be unaffected to the point where you won't see some sort of impact on these companies' abilities to distribute these consoles. And so I guess that's kind of just a little warning to maybe pre-order the systems, maybe not from a place like GameStop, but if it's Target or Best Buy or Walmart, or probably Amazon preferably, those are the best ways to make sure you're gonna get one of these. This is not going to be like the PS4 or the Xbox One, where 2 days after it comes out, you're gonna be able to walk into every store and pick up an Xbox One or a PS4, or a week later or 2 weeks later. I don't know how bad the scarcity will be, and the best case scenario could coalesce and there could be no scarcity, but if there is scarcity, it's likely to be pretty inhibiting. It could be hard into 2021 to get one of these systems, depending on how this all plays out. So really, I just want to say be prepared for that reality, and maybe be a little bit less concerned about potential delay of these systems. Sure, that's a possibility if things do not improve at all. No one can say for certain these systems won't be delayed out of 2020. It's absolutely possible. It just seems very unlikely right now. But that could change in a week. So do with that what you will. But now I want to know what you guys think about these controllers. Do you like the PS5 controller? Do you like the Xbox Series X controller? Are any of these controllers what you're looking for in a controller? Are they what you're hoping for? Are you excited? Which of these two looks better to you? I'm going to answer any of those questions down in the comments below. Let's have a real conversation. As always, if you enjoyed this video, press that like button. If you haven't yet done so, also press subscribe. That way you won't miss anything I put out. And next to the subscribe button is a little bell. You can hit that just to make sure you're notified when I upload. So subscribe and little notification bell. And what you're looking at right now are 2 recent videos on this channel. They may be news, they may be impressions, they may be reviews. I don't know. I decide after the video's edited. But you can click on either of those to stay on this channel. And until next time, guys, I'm out.